Welcome to the Gay Buddhist Forum, where teachers from all schools of Buddhism offer their perspectives on the Dharma and its application in modern times, especially for LGBTQI audiences. These talks are offered freely to the world and made possible by appreciative listeners. If you would like to support our efforts to share the Dharma with underserved audiences, please visit gaybuddhist.org. There you can donate, find a list of upcoming speakers, or enjoy many hundreds of these recorded talks dating back to 1996.
Welcome back. Before I introduce our speaker, we will go around and introduce ourselves. My name is Jay Corbett.
Mark Tilley. Tom Schleitz. Jack.
Douglas Hall.
I'm Leonard.
Joe Good.
My name is Freddie.
My name is Rob.
Jim Winters.
I'm Kei Matsuda.
I'm Phil.
David Lewis.
John Wessel.
Stephen Bloom.
Glenn is my name.
Peter.
Leor.
Lee Robbins.
Barry Dexter. Peter. Richard.
Tom.
My name's Jerry Jones. Doug Harris.
Sean.
David Axel.
George. Paul Shepard. Richard Aslany.
My name's Ray Dyer. I'm Jerry.
My name is Clint.
My name is Maupin.
I'm Ron.
My name is Jim Stewart.
I'm David.
I'm Jerry.
I'm Tom.
Anyone else?
I'm Gary.
I'm Robert. I'm Peter. And I'm Bill.
You're here for the first or second time? Please raise your hand. Well, welcome. Please stay for a bit. We have tea and food after the talk. Our speaker today is Bill Weber. Bill is a senior Vipassana practitioner and graduate from Spirit Rock's Community Dharma Leaders Program. He teaches beginning meditation classes and day-longs and has studied for the past 10 years with Eugene Cash, among others. He has 15 years of extensive retreat practice and is also a documentary filmmaker and video editor. Bill, thank you.
Thanks. The senior aspect of the practice becomes more and more appropriate, I think, for me. I'm feeling more and more senior these days. And I'm filling in for Irina Wiseman, who couldn't make it today and was scheduled to be here today. And I first sat with her about 15 years ago and completely fell in love with her. It was really early on in my practice, and didn't know much of what I was doing, and she was just a very soft and heartfelt guide. And I know she and Larry are starting a retreat at Spirit Rock on Tuesday, I believe. And she's been doing the gay and lesbian retreats there for quite a while. And I hope some of you are going. And if you haven't, I'm sure she'll continue. I think she's even moving into the Bay Area. If I'm not mistaken, I think she's moving to Oakland. And I think she's going to be taking part in the East Bay Dharma Center over there. So I encourage people to practice with her or get the opportunity to sit with her if you can. And I'll certainly do my best to share the Dharma as I know she would. One other thing I was thinking about with all this is that Buddhism's been going on this planet for 2,500 plus years. And yet we live in this time when it's actually being offered particularly to gay people. And it's a first. It's never really happened in this practice before that I know of. And it's really sort of a beautiful thing that we as a community are being engaged with this practice in that way. In this rich, deep, long practice, we have a place in it now, a very, very particular and sweet place. It was mentioned that I'm a documentary editor. I mean, I've made some films, but I mainly edit films. And I'm working on a project right now on the AIDS epidemic in San Francisco. It's a project that's in development, but we started editing it. And there's been some interviews done, and I've been sort of immersing myself back in that history of San Francisco in the 80s. And this film is very particular to San Francisco, and our experience of it and our reaction to it. I know some of you have even seen some work I've been, some of the interviews that have already been done with this. And it's brought up a lot of stuff for me. And it's not only brought up stuff for me, I've also watched what it's brought up in the people being interviewed and in some viewing parties that we've had for people for fundraising purposes. I've had the opportunity to watch what it brings up in other people. And one thing that really has been striking me is the pain and the suffering and the grief we carry with us. I'm sure many of you here can relate to this in some way because a lot of you are around my age. A lot of you have lived through this in a whole variety of ways, personally, with your family, with your friends, with your lovers, and we carry a lot of it. It's just sort of there with us, and it's been reminding me of the suffering and the pain that we don't get the opportunity to really look at, to share, to let it go, to release it, to learn from it. While that does happen, there's just enough of it that I think there's still a lot to be done and a lot that can be done with that whole experience. It's the sickness, the old age, and the death that led the Buddha to wake up. And it's the sickness and the old age and the death that seems to be constantly reminding me, you better wake up. And that's not so easy to do sometimes. I don't find it so easy to do sometimes. And in the Buddha's time, those were the main things that really sort of led him to wake up. But I think that we also had other aspects besides the sickness, old age, and death. I know I certainly do. About what do I carry? What weight do I carry around with me sometimes that I don't really get the opportunity to delve into, to share, to learn from? In part, this AIDS epidemic. Also, as gay men, I've had the opportunity a number of times in various situations to speak open-heartedly. I've taken part in billy clubs and fairy gatherings where we have this thing called a heart circle where people can just really speak from the heart. And what comes out of this all the time is what we carry around with us. And we carry around a lot of loneliness in general. I'm making some generalizations here. A lot of loneliness, a lot of isolation, a lot of self-criticism, a lot of a judgmental mind. One person that's interviewed for this documentary became positive in the early 80s and buried 2 lovers, but has been dealing with it physically himself. And he talks about the effects of having your body waste away through the epidemic, either through the drugs or through the reaction to the drugs or through the heavy diarrhea or the sickness or whatever. Your body changes. And he talks about that in the terms of being a gay man. And in the gay culture, we're incredibly body conscious. We're incredibly body conscious. And, here is this sickness that's in some ways particular to gay men that eats away at your body. It's just a really cruel thing. So we not only have sickness, old age, and death, but we have all these other things. This very self-critical mind, this very judgmental mind, this all this loneliness we can deal with. It's part of living in a culture that prizes individuality, which didn't exist in the Buddhist time so much. You lived in families, you lived in communities. The idea of, you've got your own cigarette now, baby, didn't really occur back then. We really prize individuality, and with that comes some of this loneliness and this judgmental mind and this self-criticism and this, I want to look and act and behave and be a certain way. Another thing that really got me this week, and I don't know why, was the election in Maine. And in some ways it almost got me more than the one in San Francisco. It's like, it was just like another slap in the face again. And it was, it pissed me off. So I opened my talk today up just talking about sort of the suffering, and the suffering that we can have particular to gay men. And how do we hold that? And where do we find relief and release from that suffering? To me, this becomes more and more critical. And I mentioned at the beginning, I feel more and more like a senior practitioner. I'm getting older. It's completely evident all the time for me. I'm aging. And there constantly are reminders to me of how quickly this life moves. I was just back in Kansas dealing with a bit of a family emergency, and I was with my grandnephew. And to be, have a grandnephew now, it's like, oh my God. This really sweet, cute little kid, and this little teeny guy. But I remember when his father was that size, and it seemed like that long ago. It seemed like very recently his father was that size. And this just moves by so fast. And as this life moves by so fast, I really want to spend less and less time wallowing in my own grief and suffering. And I really want to be awake to let in this life and to enjoy it and to have some contentment with it and not have the sense of dis-ease with it. A sense of being out of balance. But yes, this is okay. This is okay. Not only is this okay, this is beautiful. This is wonderful. This is miraculous. I want to be in that place more and more. And, how do I get there? Where do I take refuge? Where do I go that can help support me in that level of contentment? And taking refuge is something that is crucial to the Buddhist practice. Often I find myself in the habit of thinking that I will be happier and I will have less pain and suffering if my life is filled with pleasurable experiences, which can lead me to a few cocktails and a joint and, getting lost in the computer and maybe some sexual addiction or, all these kinds of things. If I have this kind of pleasure, my life is going to be comfortable and happy, and I'll be okay. But generally, I find that doesn't work so well. So where do I go for this comfort, for this sense of support, relaxation, safety? Where do I take refuge? I'll get into refuge in just a second, but there was one experience I had that led me to this place where I want to speak from today. And it was in the middle of the summer. I was very stressed out from work. I'm a big overachiever, and I had taken on this job that demanded a lot of me, and I was working 10 hours a day for 7 days a week, and I was completely stressed out and not centered, not balanced. And I had this small Buddhist group I meet with once a month where we talk about involvement, trying to support ourselves in involvement with service work. And I didn't even want to go to the meeting because I was just so stressed out. And I think I just, I don't want to sit. I don't want to talk to anybody. But I ended up going. And we start the meeting with a half-hour sit, much like we do right here. And in the midst of the sit, in this body that was full of tension, in this mind that was negative, contracted, I was fine with just the awareness of it. And I was not only fine, I felt open, I felt connected, I felt engaged with just this awareness of this tense body, this contracted mind, the negative thoughts that just sort of came on their own, and I was perfectly fine with it. It was like, oh, it's okay. And I finished the sit and I felt so much better. I felt so much more present. I felt so much more contented just from that awareness of where I was. And one service that our group was talking about was supporting this group of nuns that wants to move to the Bay Area from England. And there's a little pamphlet that is a fundraising pamphlet for this group of nuns. And at the top of it gave this quote saying, refuge in the clear light of awareness. And it was like a bingo moment for me. Taking refuge in the clear light of awareness. It's taking refuge in just being able to see, just being able to be present, awake, with whatever's happening. And I was like, yes, it works. I had just experienced that. So I've been sort of exploring that for a while, about taking refuge in awareness. I imagine a number of you have had the chance to go on retreats or to maybe practice this wonderful practice we share in maybe monasteries or maybe in Asia or places. But one thing that's very traditional is the taking of the refuges. And traditionally you take refuge in the Buddha, you take refuge in the Dharma, and you take refuge in the Sangha. And with that, it's been what I was talking about before. Refuge is a place of, where do we go for safety from danger, safety from hardship? Where do we find shelter? Where do we find relief? Where do we find help? I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Even sitting groups. I know a lot of sitting groups. They open and close with it. You chant it in Pali. Buddham Saranam Gacchami, Dhammam Saranam Gacchami, and you chant it 3 times, and you take and you place yourself in that refuge. And I've done that, and it's felt rich to me. I felt engaged at times, but there's something that even felt more experiential about taking refuge in awareness. For me, in a way, it was very experiential. I had a very emotional and physical response to that taking of that kind of refuge and awareness. And when I thought about it, they're really sort of one and the same. The 3 refuges, or the refuge and awareness. Because when you take refuge in the Buddha, you're basically taking refuge in the capacity we have to be awake. And when you take refuge in the Dharma, you're taking refuge in the teachings that help support us and that help guide us to waking up. And when you take refuge in the Sangha, it's a support that, it's like what we do right here in this community. We come and listen, we come and hear, we come and share dialogue, we come and share food. We set up the organization that does help support this capacity for us to waken up. And to wake up is to be aware. So to take refuge in the clear light of awareness. One thing when I think about taking refuge too, I imagine a majority of us here in the room are refugees. We're gay refugees that came to the Mecca of San Francisco as a safe place, as a place where we can, have some relief. Maybe some of us were born here, but I imagine most of us moved here at a time when there weren't many places that were that safe for gay people to be and to live openly. So we're all refugees in that way. It's just another way to look at this whole practice of taking refuge. And it's a sweet one. San Francisco's been a great place to be queer for me. But is it a refuge that really provides that safety in the sense that San Francisco changes? My friends would say, "Oh my God, it ain't what it used to be." If I could just get them to shut up for that once in a while, it's just like it's not the San Francisco that it was in the '60s, and the people that moved here in the '70s. It's like, the '60s were much better. The people who moved in the '80s, the '70s were much better, and it goes on and on and on. So in that way, it's not the safest place in the world to take a refuge because it is constantly changing. The monetary system, the crowds, the level of political maturity, all that stuff, it's constantly moving around. But to take refuge in awareness, it has a little bit of this unchanging quality that gives it another level of security to it. Refuge in the clear light of awareness. So the Buddha saw suffering in the world, and he decided to find the path to freedom from it. And I want to talk just for a minute on his night of enlightenment, because I think it plays into this refuge in the clear light of awareness. On the night of the Buddha's enlightenment, after going through many practices, many years of different practices or whatever, he's like, I am not going to get up from under this tree until it's clear to me. And the story goes that night he's visited by Mara. And Mara is known as the evildoer or the temptress or just whatever sort of knocks us off our balance. And that night the Buddha is visited by Mara in many forms, many great, both violent forms, fearful forms, sexually enticing forms, thousands of armies and beautiful women and all this stuff to try to knock the Buddha off his balance, to try to make it so he does not wake up and see this path. And what the Buddha does in this, the story goes, is that he's unmoved, and his response is, Mara, I see you. Now, one way to look at this scene is the simple act of awareness. Mara, I see you. I mentioned that night when I was in that sitting group, in my service group, and we were sitting, and my body was filled with tension, my mind was filled with tension. But in essence, what I did was I just sat there and said, I see you. And in that became this freedom, this liberation. I was unmoved by it. I didn't buy into the story of it. So I think this refuge in this awareness is a lot what happened to the Buddha on the night of his enlightenment. And again, I offer all of this as help for all of us, as it's been a help for me, on how do we deal with this pain and this suffering, this loneliness, this self-criticism that we have, this ability to be aware of it. Now, I'd like to do just a short exercise on awareness that we all have. We all have this innate awareness, and it's sort of this ability to see without becoming that involved in what's going on. So without getting into any formal sitting, I invite you all just for a moment, just for about a minute, just to close your eyes. And at first, just get a sense of the body sitting here. What does it feel like to experience a living body? And even take a moment and see if you can be looking at this body as if it's not even your own body. It's just a living body. Almost like being in a zoo. This funny form that has arms and legs, and a little round head that sits on top. Just an awareness of this body. And along with the body, we have this thinking mind. This little thought production company. There's the thinking mind, and then there can be the awareness of the thinking mind. This ability that we have to observe our own thinking. I read something the other day about observe your thinking mind as if it's neighbors on the other side of the fence talking. Okay, you can open your eyes now. It's just a short little opportunity to maybe experience a level of awareness. And it gets tricky in here, but it's almost like we're a second entity watching ourselves, watching this body, watching this mind, watching our experiences. And I think it can be really helpful sometimes to connect and to get to know this capacity, this ability that we have, to sort of watch, to be aware, to see clearly. One of the first things I want to say about this ability is that it's a way that we can not take things so personally. I don't know about you, but most of what happens in my life I take very personally. It's my habit. We live in this world of experience, and we usually interpret it in a personal way. Something happens, and all of a sudden, it becomes ours. Somebody says something that we don't like, and my feelings are hurt. I'm getting older. My body is aging. I'm not hearing so good anymore. My hearing is going away. So we start to personalize it all. Whereas another way to look at it is it's just occurrences that are ongoing, that keep on happening, that really don't necessarily, we don't have to own and we don't have to cling to. Because as soon as we start to grab onto this stuff, it festers, it grows, it becomes cancerous almost, because we hold on to it so tightly. Mine, my suffering, my pain, my joy, my youthful body, whatever it is that we start to own. It's just sort of the world and our experience of it moving around us. We experience the world through this, living entity that we carry around with us, our body. It comes to us in sight and sound and taste and touch and thought. We experience the world. And then we react to it. And we react to it pretty much through our personalities. Something happens and Bill reacts maybe differently than Clint reacts or than George reacts, because we all have these different personalities that come from someplace and that we react to the world accordingly. One thing I like to consider from time to time, and I'm sure I've used in talks before, is that who picked their personality? Did anybody here sort of pick theirs? Have people here spent a lot of time and money trying to adapt theirs or to mold it a bit or to fix it? Yeah, I sure have. And what's been the most useful though is and with the money I spent in doing this is really sort of learning how to live with it and not how to make it into something else. But we all have these different personality types for whatever reasons, for the culture we grew up in, for the time of year we were born, for the country we grew up in, for our parents, for their genes, for their parents, for the schools we went to. All this stuff that sort of molds sort of who we are, and that sort of interacts with how we experience the world and what our response is. And to me, this is a bit how we personalize a lot of this, how we react to the world is through our personalities. And, I'm sure many of you have been working with the Enneagram or know a little bit about the Enneagram, but I'm sort of a fear type. So oftentimes when something happens to me, I react with fear. What this refuge in the clear light of awareness offers is that for me just to sort of see, there's the personality arising. There's the fear arising. There's the reactive self arising. And it allows me not to own it quite so much and to be a little bit free of it and to almost view it as, again, as I was trying to point to in this sit, as an outside person looking in, just sort of watching myself, watching my personality. It can be a really helpful thing. And it's very freeing, because having a strong personality can be very limiting and stifling, I think. And to be able to have some space and some humor and some distance and some clarity around that can be really helpful. And that's, I think, what this awareness practice can allow. And it can be really helpful when we start to be really judgmental or critical, which I think we all know. I've taught a number of beginning meditation classes, and it's amazing how judgmental we all are. They just go on and on and on. And I don't know why, but, we have our very strong likes and dislikes, and the person that is almost always the most judgmental towards is ourself. This self-criticism that, I'm going to come back to the beginning of the talk again. It's that layer of suffering that I don't want anymore. I just don't. Life's too sweet and short. I just don't want to keep on carrying that around all the time. So to be able to sort of see that for what it is, there's the judgmental mind again. There's that self-critical mind again. Without really analyzing it so much, or really trying to figure it out, or get to its root, or get to its cause, but just sort of seeing it for what it is. There's that again. It's almost like an itch in the body, or the sound of an airplane going by. It's just an occurrence. And just to be with it as that can disarm it, can disempower it in some ways. Not to take it so personally. Another thing about this awareness is that to connect with it can be there's a cleanness, and a clarity to it that can be pretty astounding sometimes, and it's almost joyous. A year ago, I had a really nasty flu. I was up visiting some friends in Portland, and I got really, really sick, and I had 104 fever. My body really hurt like hell. I felt like shit, and in the midst of that, there was an awareness of that as it was going on that I really keyed into and I really stayed with for a while. And that awareness of the sick body, of the feverish, achy body was not sick. The awareness was fine. It could sit there and watch this. It wasn't sick. And it saw very clearly. And that gave me some comfort in a lot of ways in the midst of all that. And it gave me some really good outside perspective. And another whole way to deal with my flu, it became almost like this little lab experiment to sort of watch myself as I was sick. So I think it's a really nice quality to look at in this ability we have to be aware, is that it's colorless. It's not tied up with emotions. It's ageless. It doesn't really get old. This body's getting old. My mind is getting forgetful. My awareness doesn't feel old. It feels timeless. It doesn't feel old, doesn't feel young. It's just the ability to sort of see. I think part of what is important about taking refuge is to have something that we can trust in. This trust is really closely aligned with this feeling of safety, this feeling of being held. And I think to key into our awareness is something that we find we can trust in. It's like there for us when we take the time and take that moment to sort of engage it. I can just sort of watch this, whatever's going on. coming back to the personality a bit, there are moments when I find it really easy and helpful to key into my own ability to be aware is when I get really emotional, like when I get angry at my partner. And, that can just completely take me away sometimes. That energy, that fire, that growing of size of being righteous and being angry. And in the midst of that, when I'm not so completely intoxicated with that, I can sort of step away and say, oh, there's Bill in his angry mode again. And that awareness is not angry. That awareness to sort of sees, there's that angry again, and just sort of observe it. Again, they can disengage it a bit. That gives me the space of which to maybe pull back and not do something I'll regret later. And again, that's something I can trust in when, again, I take the time to sort of engage in that. So in sort of wrapping up here, I want to offer a few things. First is that I encourage people to play with this a bit, to look at our own ability to be aware, and to maybe find things in your life that help support that, and to develop that capacity, that connection, that familiarity with our awareness. And one thing is this sitting practice. This is what we're doing right here. Because when we sit, all these things come up, and we really sort of limit the number of distractions that we have. So we sit and, thoughts arise. Can we have awareness of thoughts? Body sensations arise. Can we have awareness of body sensations? Emotions arise, and they can really take us away. Awareness of emotion. So this sitting practice is a great ground, is a great opportunity to develop and become more familiar with this capacity we have to be aware. Also, to think about this as not as a way, as I mentioned earlier, as a way to figure things out, but it's something that we have innately and intuitively. It's just there. And to try to make it too complicated, to keep it simple. So not to have an analyzing mind about it, but just to have this very simple, like the Buddha on the night of his enlightenment. I see you. I see you. It also helps us to be with whatever arises. It includes everything. It's not a practice or a gift that is dependent on certain conditions being met. But everything's included. No matter what arises, we can be aware of it. The quote came from a pamphlet that was put out by this group of nuns that were from this English monastery, and the monastery is headed by Ajahn Sumedho. Ajahn Sumedho was one of the first and probably most prominent of the Western monks being taught by Ajahn Chah back in, I think Ajahn Sumedho might have even started in the late 60s with Ajahn Chah. And Ajahn Chah was one of the first Thai monks that actually would teach Westerners this practice. And so there's this book called Intuitive Awareness by Ajahn Sumedho, which really gets into a lot of this refuge and awareness practice. But there's a quote on the back of it that I really like that he put on the back of the book. Meditation can mean all kinds of things. It's a word that includes any kind of mental practices, good or bad. But when I use this word, what I'm mainly using it for is that sense of centering, that sense of establishing and resting in the center. The only way one can really do that is not to try and think about it and analyze it. You just have to trust in a simple act of attention, in a simple act of awareness. It's so simple and so direct that our complicated minds get very confused. What's he talking about? I've never seen any still point. I've never found a still point in me. When I sit and meditate, there's nothing still about it. But there's an awareness of that. Even if you think you've never had a still point, or you're confused, or you're a confused, messed up character that really can't meditate, trust in the awareness of that very perception. I love that. It's when we sit and we think we're having the worst sit, we can't meditate, that our mind's just completely lost. There's an awareness of that. That's the practice. That's it. That's good meditation, basically. Or great meditation, It's, but it just takes that simple act of awareness. One thing that also comes up when I teach beginning meditation classes is that people say, this is a practice of disengagement. I'm just going to be a sort of a passive person that lets everything come by me. And when I speak of awareness, I realize it might sound a bit like that too. We just apply awareness to whatever occurs, whatever arises, whatever it is we're experiencing. But to me, it's not the disengagement, it's active engagement. It's allowing it all. It's being present, it's being in the center of it all as it circles around us. But it's not attaching to it, it's not clinging to it, it's not owning it or identifying with it. So, it's been a help for me. Coming back to that quote, taking refuge in the clear light of awareness. I hope that these words might help alleviate and dispel some of the suffering that others here might be feeling. So if you find yourself in a really judgmental mind or dealing with a lot of grief or whatever, the awareness of that, the allowance of that. And one way to do it is just to sit there, to notice it, and one way not to personalize it is just to feel it in the body. Where is it in the body? Is it big? Is it small? Is it hot? Is it cold? Does it move? Not to get so engaged, but maybe to have some freedom around that. And again, all this is just a way that we can wake up. Just so that this life that just goes by so fast, that we can be here for it and appreciate it maybe a little bit more and engage ourselves in it. So thank you for your kind attention, and there's a few minutes for some questions or comments or...
Michael, I'm Tom. Thank you for the talk. I really found it very useful. It's something, this concept that you're describing is something I've been thinking a lot about actually in the last month or two. In fact, I remember coming home one day last month, I'm all excited that I kind of stumbled upon something comparable to what you described in my partner. And I had a comment and question. I've also been thinking about whether this awareness that you're talking about is a kind of disengagement or detachment.
Right.
And at least where my thinking is at this point is that it's maybe a disengagement from the aversion that one is caught up in
Right.
the moment.
Right.
And so stepping back from wanting whatever it is, the judgment, the self-criticism, the anger, the fear to go away, and bringing some compassion to it being there and being okay with that.
Right, right. I love that disengagement from aversion, and disengagement maybe from clinging. Those sounds like really healthy disengagements to me, right? So maybe it is a disengagement practice of some sort. I like that. Thank you.
My response to that the part where it can get into disengagement is to remember the other wing of Buddhism, which is compassion, and you use that word.
Right.
And
Right.
so it sometimes can be for me a little head and to keep my heart open
Right.
and to have compassion for myself. And I'm feeling grief to just step back and watch it, but
Right.
also to have compassion and have an open heart about it. And same thing with the world and all the suffering in the world and all the
Right.
stuff going on.
Thanks, Rich. Yeah, another thing. I think I'd even put a note on it too. Is that one thing when we are aware of our difficulties sometimes, that our heart is open, and that sort of comes out of this awareness. I think sometimes that in great grief, our heart is often torn way open, and that's like the awareness sort of allows that gift of that to maybe come to light a bit more.
Does the awareness ever lead you to an engagement rather than a disengagement?
Well, I think so. There's a woman who's spoken here a number of times, Pamela Weiss, who it's an old Zen practice. They ask the Zen master, they say, what's the purpose of a lifetime of practice? And he says, appropriate response. This is sort of Pam's mantra in a way too. With awareness and with this disengagement allows the opportunity for appropriate response, which is a more maybe compassionate engagement or a more purposeful engagement. Instead of just reacting out of our personalities and our habits, we can with this awareness we can actually have some clarity and to have purposeful engagement in some ways. I just like to offer that.
Well, you had mentioned isolation and some negative feelings at the beginning.
Right.
And I was just wondering if this sense of engagement in the sense of just being a part of everything, not so much in reacting positively to it, but just being a part of it rather
Right.
than isolated from it
Right.
or self-critical, just feeling a part of.
Right. I think that also comes a bit from just not taking it all so personally. That you realize that, I'm just a silly monkey like all these other silly monkeys.
I recently was living in a situation where there was one person there who just couldn't understand it, who seemed to be using all his energy to make me miserable and unhappy. And I thought to myself over and over again, what an opportunity to rise above all this. And as I kept rising and rising and rising,
Right.
nothing changed.
Right.
And at a certain point I lost it. I just completely lost it. And I said, I'm really hurt. And every effort I make seems to redouble the amount of antagonism that you have towards me. And immediately when I said that, I got lots of responses, including in this situation, somebody who talked about my bad attitude and all of it. And there was something so thrilling about being able to be identified as having a bad attitude. And once I thought, yeah, it's a bad attitude. There's no doubt this is a bad attitude. And after I got through feeling sorry for myself, I actually went up, I apologize, I'm really sorry for hurting you. Because he clearly got hurt. And then something happened. And this has been going on for months. And something happened, and he became very caring and sensitive and warm. And of course, I became very caring and sensitive and warm. And the reason I bring this all up is that my limited mind could never have imagined that was beyond my imagination. It was beyond my capacity to understand the interdynamics that were going on.
Right. What changed it, though, do you think?
What changed it was my acceptance of... Actually, there's a little piece in here which is called compassion for self.
Yeah.
And I have some compassion for myself and all the hurt I've gone through.
Right.
So by acknowledging that, as I would any other human being who had gone through that,
Right.
this was no longer my hurt. There was just a hurt.
Right.
And I was simply acknowledging it.
Right.
then that was the beginning of letting go of it all, of the story, of the everything. I was hurt, and then I could let go of it, and then I could be really open to change. It would shock me that there could be change there, and
Right.
I didn't resist any of it, just allowed it all to sweep me along,
Right.
so that I was never right at any particular point, or ever wrong at any particular point, and it was just flux.
Right. Right. Beautiful. Thank you.
Maybe one more question.
Is this what is called bare attention? Is that what you're talking about?
It's probably very similar. Yeah.
And witnessing self, are we talking about the same?
Yeah. Those are all awareness practices. Yeah.
Self-inquiry.
Big time. Yeah. It seems to me. It's what's happening and what's our relationship to it. Yeah.
What do you think it is? What do you think the source of it is? Okay.
I have no
we
idea.
don't know. I think that's what we don't know.
I have no idea. But that's part of what it's a very tricky thing to talk about. Mm-hmm. And actually, I haven't heard a lot of talks about this in a way. And maybe there's a reason. Maybe I shouldn't be talking about it. But to me, my experience is it is colorless. It's ageless. It doesn't carry emotions. It doesn't. Like I say, it doesn't get sick. It doesn't really even have opinions. It just is the ability to sort of see, our ability to sort of see, and to see ourselves. And the bare attention is just sort of this big, open, let it all in, which is great, which is a beautiful way to live. And so it seems really tied in. And the whole inquiry practice of, that's what the Buddha was doing. I see you, I see you, I see you. It's like it's this constant recognition of what's happening.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Will you hang out for a little while so if people have other questions? Thank you. Do we have any announcements, Sangha? Do we have a host?
Yes. Good morning. I'm Kane Matsuda, and I'm the substitute host this morning. Welcome to GBF. Please stay for the social hour, and we have some fruit and cookies, and also enjoy tea. And if you use teacups, please wash them and put them back on the rack above the sink. We also have sign-up sheets for newcomers, so if you'd like to stay in touch with this group and receive our newsletters, please leave your name, addresses, both street addresses as well as email address. And there are some people who go out and have lunch, usually after the social hour. The group meet usually around the front door. So look for the group. If you can find it, let us know, and we'll try to hook you up with the group. And finally, I'll be coming around with the Dana Ball. Suggested donation is $5 to $8, but we will accept any amount, particularly the amount over that suggested amount. But again, thank you very much. That's it.
Okay, other announcements?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to have the other shoulder operated on in November. I had the right one operated on. In May, I fell back on a chair and hurt both elbows. And I live in Oakland, and so I really would like your prayers. And I also would really love some help. In particular, last time I found it, I needed people to help me take a shower, and I needed that for about I think up to 4 or 5 weeks. I can sponge myself with the other hand, but I can't really. It's really nice to be able to take a shower. So that, and any phone calls, any in-person visits, it's great to have dinner with someone, and I'm more than willing to, pay for the groceries. But I have the last operation to know what I need and to ask for it, so I really would appreciate that. Any
When's it happening?
Friday.
Fair enough. So, Clint?
Actually, I think Kim was going to make the announcement. I was going to make something first.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Wow. The GBF is again having an annual Thanksgiving Day potluck, and it will be held at my place in the East Bay. And if you're interested in coming, please let me know if possible, because we would like to sort of plan this potluck so that we have a variety of dishes. And this event is open to not only members but to friends and family. So feel free to bring other people as well. And there are flyers out there about this event.
Jerry.
Yes, our speaker next week is going to be Garth Gilchrist, and Garth has spent his life drawing people close to nature through wilderness adventures, teaching deep nature awareness, et cetera, et cetera. And he's also drawn thousands of people to draw on their connection with a great life that flows through everything. And it says in here, expect an adventure into your own inner landscape and story, and a glimpse of life that surprise and move you.
Jim.
Yeah, hey, I am making once again a request for someone to volunteer. Our friend Don Mohedin, who has had serious heart trouble, has had to relinquish his maintaining of our mailing list. So we need someone to step forward. And the mailing list allows us organizationally to keep track of our members. From which we generate a mailing list for our newsletters. Most people here can access our newsletter online, but we have over 200 prisoners who really, our newsletter is a lifeline. So this is a primary and historic portal of service that our community extends out. And so besides the organizational necessity of keeping track of ourselves, this allows us to extend into prisons. And if you've ever broken a law and have not gotten caught, that might extend your compassion to those who have. Oh, I know you haven't done that.
You were my accomplice.
Yes, maybe a few times. So I'm trying to maintain open, spacious awareness. I won't ask again. We need someone who's busy, who's used to just going through a list of responsibilities. If you are online 10 minutes a week, you have time for this job. It is very low labor intensive, but it is extremely crucial organizationally.
Can you describe the job again?
Well, we have a mailing list, so twice a month you would take it home and add on a few names into an Excel or Word file, and every 2 months you would click, I think I counted 11 keystrokes to generate mailing labels, and then you would have to carry the labels to your printer and print them, and then you would mail the labels to Jack, who arranges the mailing part. This is without resistance, this is an easy job. But if you take it as a crucifixion, so much the better. So we have a mailing list. We have a mailing party for the end of this month or the first month?
3 weeks from today.
3 weeks from today. So someone really pretty soon now may want to be stepping forward. And I would do it, but I don't want to be piggy about it.
Recovering Catholics should
who knows how many eons of bad karma would be burned away. Take it seriously, they don't know. It's mysterious. But it needs to happen sort of soon, okay? So I won't ask again. Thank you.
I just want to echo what Jim says. My personal experience is you get what you give. This community is a very important community for me. I think it is for a lot of other people in the room too. And it becomes even deeper, more meaningful when you're actually doing something to help the community continue on.
And it's been going on for what, 17, 18 years?
Give or take a gazillion years.
Yeah. This particular one, though. Yeah.
Any other announcements? Okay, let's gather in a circle. Do you want to give a dedication, or do you want me to give a standard one? Or do you want to give a standard? Okay. By the power and truth of this practice, may all beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all be free from sorrow and the causes of sorrow. May all never be separated from the sacred happiness which is without sorrow. And may all live in equanimity without too much attachment or too much aversion, and live believing in the equality of all that lives. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Gay Buddhist Forum. If you would like to hear several new talks per month and be notified of upcoming speakers so you can participate live, please subscribe to this podcast, like us on Facebook, and join our mailing list by visiting gaybuddhist.org.